Director?
You're ready.
Thank you so much. Welcome to our Tuesday, April 8th Finance Committee meeting. We're hoping it will be a joyful one, but let's put on our happy hats and move through the budget. I will turn it over to Andrea. Are you ready?
You can do introductions?
Oh, introductions.
Jeff Hanley.
Joanne O'Brien.
Molly Rogers.
Alyssa Tracy. Becky Fless.
Tony V.
Megan Carlson. Michelle Tucker.
Administrative staff. Pat Hoffman, Superintendent.
Andrea Dish, Business Manager.
Dave Dostey, Facilities Director.
Sarah Simmons, principal at Gardner Regional Middle School.
Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum.
Katie Gould, principal at Helen Thompson School.
Katie Day, Principal at Riverview Community School.
Karen Moody, principal of Laura Richards School.
Dave Stubbard, Athletic Director.
Lauren Arnold, Principal at Gardner Area High School.
Josh Farr, Delta Ed Director.
Thank you. All right, now discussion, beginning with energy management consultants.
You gonna lead it or do you want me to lead it?
Let's do it together,
Okay.
all right?
Sure.
So, back in February, we came to you as a follow-up from the extensive assessment that EMC did of all of our schools, right? We had the report, we went through it twice, I believe, with EMC. And it was decided by this committee that you would move forward with the energy efficiency upgrade, which would be just the lighting upgrade. And that you would do that, the cost was about $150,000, I think, correct, with the understanding that there was going to be a savings with Energy Main, right? And it was about, I don't have this in front of me, so I apologize. I think it was about an $80,000 savings. So that happened back in February. Somewhere along the line, it fell off the plate and never made it to the full school board for approval. So the full school board has not yet approved whether to move forward with that project. So now that we're in the middle of the budget season, the question is surfacing, right? We've had these conversations. We've talked with Gabe. I've had a follow-up conversation with Tom, the president of EMC, about whether we should pause and wait at this point to see what happens with the construction application. Because if you're not on that list in the first 5 or 6 slots, there's a good chance that you're not going to receive subsidy. And if that happens, then you may want to actually reconsider how much money you spend on the facilities to address some of the significant deficiencies that he identified, and maybe do a larger project and roll it all together. But if you do that and if you wait, you're going to lose that $80,000, right? So we just thought we should come back here and have a brief conversation to talk about it. If you want to move forward, then we do need to bring it to the board at this week's meeting. It can be brought forward as part of the finance committee's agenda.
Yeah.
I've spoken with Tom, and Tom has said basically at this point, given the time frame, and you would have a lot of paperwork that would have to be processed behind the scenes, it really wouldn't be a summer project per se, but they could easily do it after school hours like they did with the middle school project. So that is something that they could easily do in the fall. And he indicated that it would probably be easier for them to do it as a separate project versus trying to fold it into a larger project. Because then they wouldn't be tripping over each other as they were trying to get all of that work done. So the purpose of this conversation is really to kind of reassess where you are and see how you want us to move forward with that project. What did I miss?
Just a few things. Sorry. So unlike the lighting project that we did at the middle school with our federal Easter monies, this particular project is a carve out to statute where basically the state requires all projects to go through basically taxpayer approval referendum. However, there's a carve out for projects that have energy savings. And because we are funding the project, there's additional criteria. With the project that we did at the middle school during Easter, we weren't financing it. It was coming from Easter. So there's a lot of finance pieces that we have to work with our attorney on. And part of that is whether or not this is going to be a tax exempt lease, how long do we want to fund the project for, among other things. And there's that go back and forth between the attorneys need to look at our projects to make sure that they all pass the straight face muster as far as being energy savings. And then again, deciding based on that, whether it's taxable and then or tax exempt lease financing. And as I've said in the past, taxable financing is at a higher percentage rate. So, and then there are other pieces, other moving pieces about if we do a tax exempt lease purchase and if we're on the school construction list and we happen to have to close our schools, then we are required to pay off that, and we can't sell that building until such time that that lease is paid for. So there's a lot of moving parts. So from where I sit, I know that you see an $80,000 reduction. I'm thinking based on the project size, we might be able to save that alone in the percentage in the financing, right? And I also, from where I sit, there's something to be said about knowing whether we're on that list, whether or not we're looking at a 10-year building project or a project, or if we're looking at a 15 or a 20-year project. So there's a lot of unknowns that we would be able to capture by just pausing. So that is basically the crux of this discussion. And when Pat and I were talking about the cuts in the budget, this is one of those big ticket items. There's a $150,000 placeholder. It's just an estimate. I don't know. It all depends on our financing and the number of years, but it's one of those things that we felt remiss if we just didn't discuss again. Anyway.
Now, we do still have to pay the fee for having done all of the
30,000.
the 30,000, which would have been rolled into the budget if we were choosing to do it, correct?
Correct. So the question is, and it's probably a conversation with EMC, how late are they willing to do this project and still allow us to take that $30,000, would it be next spring? If so, well, then maybe we can build it in next year's budget by the time that project is done. So, like I said, from where I sit, there's a lot of interest in pausing to see what happens, but I understand what is in front of you, or we understand rather.
Jeff, do you have something, or are you just cogitating?
My gears are spinning. When will we, I know I'm asking you to do the crystal ball thing. When will we know if we're on the construction list?
We were told that the list will be made available in June.
Okay, so we can't pause. We have to make a budget decision before we'll ever know that answer.
Correct.
Okay.
Did we get information from EMC that yes, they would roll that 30,000 into this project alone? I think I guess I was not sure that they were gonna.
So
What scale of project we need to buy into.
right, so this would work into that. So if we were to sign on to this project, we wouldn't be having to pay $30,000 for all of the work that they did, analyzing all our facilities. So right, it's 80,000 in incentives, and if we don't do that, we have to pay the 30. So really, we're losing 110 if you look at it that way. And the other piece, we do not know if there will be incentives next year. we do not know. I remember the date when they usually announce that, it's in September sometime, I think, to even know if there's going to be another round of incentives. So that's the piece right now, that they know they're able to get the incentives right now.
So can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
So if we are unable to have the work done this summer, which we know we won't be able to do that because of everything else that will happen behind the scenes, and it won't actually incur until the fall, say.
Yeah.
Are you stating if they don't know if there'll be another round of incentives, is it possible that the incentives won't even be in place by the time we're ready to start?
Well, they'll be in place, so if we were to sign on a proposal within the next month, we would be in this round of incentives because the project would be done prior to the end of this year,
December.
December.
So
So
that
we
would
fall
be in
into
next
this
year's.
calendar year incentives, but I do not know if they'll be available for the following
Spring.
year. Yeah, it's efficiency main money, so depending on what the allocation is that they have, and most of it is federal money. So they just roll it from the federal and efficiency main gets it, they're able to pass it along.
So this is main efficiency trust is where the money comes from.
Yeah, I think that's
Federal
where,
monies.
that's where it is.
Well, it's
correct.
a fee paid by the utilities actually per kilowatt. We pay our light bills actually, and phone bills. It's a tiny sliver. It's paid into a pool, and every year that pool is established by those fees. And then that's how they allot the money.
Okay.
So it's not really dependent on federal activity. It's in the law now, and it's an ongoing collection of fees. It's happening all the time. It doesn't need to be voted on anywhere. It's already the law, so that main efficiency trust fund bills constantly and gets used constantly, so.
And they don't empty it year over year, they just,
They try to empty it every year and they try to project forward what they're gonna have, but. So if they had it last year, chances are they'll have it next year.
that's,
I'm
and
not
now that's.
gonna write that in blood or anything.
Right, yeah.
No, but it was curious, I'm sorry, Molly, it's curious to me if if it was unusual that they wouldn't have those monies, but it sounds like they would. Anyway, yes, Molly.
I was under the impression that the specific lighting project wasn't going to be
It's
eligible for the rebate.
because they're phasing out the
Right,
incandescent
so not
bulbs.
saying the money will be gone,
Yeah.
but would the project remain eligible because of the lighting?
Gotcha,
that we're
eligibility is
replacing?
gonna change,
I
perhaps.
don't, that was what I was led to believe.
I mean,
but-
we can definitely get some more information exactly from Tom, but they were worried that the funding may not be there. There's the uncertainty that there will not be available funding.
And that's true, the main efficiency trust makes their own rules about how they distribute the money. So they could have a project like this that's valid this year, that won't be next year.
Yeah, I just,
And there's no way to know these things, you know.
they had mentioned there was funds set aside for heat pump projects.
Yeah.
And that money has been,
Yeah.
I guess, pulled back.
Exhausted, yeah.
Yeah, it's been pulled back,
Yeah.
so that's their concern,
Right,
that they thought they had the money and then all of a sudden it's cut off and they don't have it.
You know, on the other hand, if we do a 10-year project, we may be able to save 110,000 in finance charges, depending
Yeah.
upon whether it's tax exempt or a taxable lease. And the only way that we'll know which way we're going is by seeing that construction, the school construction list, to know, are we on it? If not, then it would make sense that we do a 20-year payback project as opposed to a 10-year payback project. And then again, depending upon what's in the project, whether it's taxable or tax exempt, again, that has a lot to do with interest rates, so.
But if we accept the project, it's gonna affect this year's budget. I mean, it's part of our budget that we will have to cover the cost of it. Okay.
Do we have a sense of any savings realized from the project, like that?
Yeah.
more efficient bulbs, we would,
I mean, we've looked a little bit at it. I have pulled the last couple months. It's, again, last year, trying to compare it to last year. Last year's winter months were not as extreme. And the majority of our power usage goes towards running pumps.
oh, yeah.
Fans, ventilation. So when that's not running as much, it's not using as much power.
Yeah.
So looking at what we did this winter, it's been a lot more extreme. We've had colder days. So looking at the amounts, kilowatt usage, it's almost the same. So it is hard.
Tony, when they're talking about savings, they're not talking about dollar savings the way that we talk about savings. They're talking about they
Yeah,
don't take
yeah.
into account fluctuations and the demand, not the demand charge, the delivery charge, sorry, or the rate that we're paying. So while we may be seeing our kilowatt hours decrease, we may be paying more in power because of other factors. So it's
Right, we
it's
can't
a
separate those out. So
Yep.
that makes sense, actually.
Yeah.
Andrea is 100% correct.
Yeah.
Even though our kilowatt hours over the years have gone down, our electric cost has still gone up. So
Imagine.
it's almost a
who
struggle.
knew,
Yeah.
right?
So Andrea, when you say there's a lot of moving parts and attorneys and that kind of thing, are attorneys figured into this?
Because it's been what's called an ECOS project, there's now work that needs to be done that we didn't need to do when we did the middle school, because we had the funding for the project. So that's gonna slow us down as far as signing and financing, and I mean, certainly we can't start a project until the financing is in place, which is why Pat had the conversation with Tom,
Right.
we are in April, right?
We are in April, like
Right.
almost mid-April.
So, and everyone's booking for the summer, so, I understand where, if we haven't got it, they don't have it on the books, it's not happening in August or July, so if not, when,
Okay.
Can EMC be approached to find out if we delay the project until the spring, if we can roll over?
Gabe, do you know how long it will take for them to do the project? Did they say?
I mean, based on the middle school, I mean, the high school has, I believe about the same amount of fixtures as the middle school did. And they were able to do that. I mean, it wasn't all at once, but if you just look at the time, they did that in about 2.5, 3 weeks for the one school. So with rolling in the other schools, it'll be a couple months worth of time. And I mean, they were great. They came in, they worked extra hours, they left no mess. Honestly, the staff barely even knew they were there when they came in the next morning. So it's definitely they've been doing this for quite a few years. They've done a lot of colleges. So they primarily work, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. So they're used to working these after hours.
I just sent him a text.
Maybe
So
not
we'll
this
see
time.
whether he is available to respond or not.
Thank you. Looking at the folder that you sent us.
Okay,
So in the meantime, any thoughts on this? Because this will make a significant impact on your budget one way or the other.
Right.
I'm trying to
So
understand what the options are that we're weighing right now. There've been a lot of ideas shared. So is it pay 30,000 and just wait and see if we're on the list?
Yeah.
Or we're waiting to find out from a text if he'll hold on the 30,000, wait and see if we're on the list?
yeah, I mean, there are a lot of options. One, just move forward as is, okay?
30,000 in our budget.
The 30 with the 150 in the budget. You can wait entirely, see if we're on the list. And if you're not on the list, then you have ultimately some decisions to make, whether you want to move forward with this project, whether you want to do a larger project. you could say now that the intent is to build it into next year's budget, all depending on that $30,000. That help? Did I miss an option?
Nope.
I think those are
We'll pay $30,000 and just wait and see
wait and
whenever.
see,
Wait and
right?
see.
And you're not tied. The information that he provided was extraordinary, right? Provided you with incredible information
Yes,
regarding the status of your facility. So
yes,
I would certainly hope that at some point you take advantage of the details, that specific report that he provided so that you can take action to upgrade your facilities. Because there's no way you're going to have all of your facilities are going to be approved for funding, right? So, you know, the middle school had a number of deficiencies. Some of your newer schools still had deficiencies.
right.
He's responding.
And just a reminder, once we look at doing projects other than energy savings, like it's going to have to go to a referendum. That is out of your hands. The state statute's gonna require our taxpayers to vote, so.
Do we need a motion?
Just waiting.
I guess I would like for you to kind of talk about what you're thinking before a motion, so that I know whether you need a motion or not.
My thinking is I would postpone this.
But pay the 30,000.
Yep.
And I'm in agreement with you, pay the 30,000 so we can remove the 150 out of this year's budget.
Yep.
And take advantage of the immense amount of information in the booklet that he gave to
Well,
us.
actually it'd be 120,000, right? or 130,000, because we're on. It's 150,000, including the 30,000, right?
It's just there's 150,000 to make a payment. We would pay him the 30,000 out of this year's budget. So it would be
Yeah,
a
reduction.
150,000 reduction.
I'm in agreement, what is?
30,000 will come from this
This year.
current
Yeah,
budget.
we owe him.
Yes.
The work was
Right
done
now.
in this year. It needs to come in, it would need to come in this year.
And it's obviously not wasted because we got a lot of information that we can use.
Right, and it was in the budget.
To do the eval.
The
To do
one
the
fifty,
eval.
the 150 is in the budget.
In next year's budget.
Next year's budget, it's not, of course. It's in the budget that you're voting on, right? The one that we're building.
Correct.
There's $150,000 in there. It would be up to you to then build in the money necessary for the following year,
Correct.
if you wanted something done that particular summer. I mean, according to him, you know, he could probably hold off the cost, that $30,000 for you. But really want to stress that, again, that $30,000 doesn't even begin to scratch the
Right,
amount of money his business paid and the cost that they incurred in order to provide you with such a thorough analysis. The amount of time spent by his engineers was significant. So, and he understands that, right? That's the agreement right up front. But just to be really, really clear, that the $30,000 is just a drop in the bucket, really, for the work that they performed for this district. But that he could probably hold off that cost. Understanding at some point, if you don't move forward with his work, you're going to have to pay that.
Or maybe even if we pay the $30,000 and we do take him up on it, then he could reduce it from that budget.
I think he's mentioned that in the past, that he would do that.
I think it's a
So-
good faith offer.
I think it's a good faith gesture to pay the 30,000.
Yeah.
I agree.
So based on what you just said, I do believe that you should have a motion because this committee has already made a motion to move forward with the project. So there should be another motion if you are altering that decision.
The timing.
Mhm.
If you,
I would like to make a motion then to postpone this project.
And
and to pay can you also include the $30,000?
Yeah, for the 30,000.
second,
All those, and everyone understands it's committee understand that? That's exactly where we're headed here. Pay the 30,000, delay the 150. Okay, just want to make sure that's clear to everyone. All right, all those in favor?
You're only for you.
And we're all
Just
over
the
here.
four of them.
Yeah, I was like.
You're not on this committee.
Okay. But do you
Shadow
like it?
committee members.
Great. Jeff, thank you for your thoughtful help there. Appreciate it. Moving along.
I'm gonna try to attempt to share.
I know you can do it.
I
We believe in you.
know I don't have my mouse and I'm not
Carry over
used to
from
it.
curriculum. We believe in you, Andrea. You can do it.
Thank you. Okay, let's. I am so not very good with the trackpad, people, so you'll have to,
We can all do the
am I
trackpads are
jumping in
frustrating.
or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm just reaching out and letting him know.
So,
Thank you.
after, last week's finance committee meeting, we made some more cuts. I'm doing things backwards. This is where we are after those additional cuts, not including obviously the 150,000 that we just talked about. So currently we are up 1.73%. Our budget is at $33,002,699, an increase over this year's budget of $561,699.02. Yep. So, how did we get there? So this is a document that you have seen. This is the cuts since our last meeting. The first thing on the list is under regular instruction, opportunity culture stipends. So in our budget for the past 2 years have been stipends for special education educators, first caseloads. There was 102,000 in the budget for those stipends. We have removed the difference between 102,000 and the 49,000 and repurposed 49,000 for opportunity culture stipends. Do you wanna, would you?
Yeah, I
like
want to be really
discuss
clear.
it?
Those are not all for opportunity culture, just
Okay.
for clarity. Because opportunity culture is supposed to be neutral, budget neutral. So we may need a little bit of funds, but we're not going to need
Okay.
all of that. We also need to look at some appropriate adjustments for our coaches. There's a necessary adjustment there in terms of their salary. This we may be able to tweak and reduce it a little bit more. I don't have a specific number, but rather than reducing the entire $102,000, we felt that we needed just to keep a little bit of a cushion to allow us to be able to move that work forward. We've invested a lot of time, a lot of energy. We're really enthusiastic about where this is taking us instructionally. And the last thing we want to do is not have a little bit of a cushion to fall back on. So.
I just wanted to point out that while it looks like it's an increase, the decrease is below, so it's kind of the net of the two. The next item, under regular instruction, I just want you to know, sorry.
I have a question.
Sorry, Michelle.
Can you tell me what opportunity culture is?
I will let Pat talk to that.
Well, that is a curriculum thing. It's a district initiative. I don't know, I don't know if we want to get into. Very
Michelle,
brief.
there's some information in the curriculum minutes if it'll help you. I can send you the specific ones. It's an instructional leadership framework. And it's shifting some of what we already do, formal leadership for teachers, from managerial leadership to instructional leadership. And so the shifts are consequential in outcomes for student improvement, but not in budget. And then the shifts at the elementary level are consequential in terms of instructional leadership, formalizing instructional leadership opportunities for teachers, and building it into their workday. And it's part of our educator sustainability theme and it's built into the strategic plan that was approved by the board in September. But I think you came on after that.
I came on after
Yeah,
that, and I would
um,
definitely appreciate that
But
email.
if you send me a quick note, I'll follow up with the minutes that have more information in it. And we'll circle back, of course, in curriculum again.
Sounds great.
As we get there.
And this is year 2 with the initiation actually going into place next year. So we've been planning for this for 2 years now.
Okay.
And it will actually begin next school year, so.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda on the list, is healthcare reduction. Now, the last meeting that we had, we were told that, healthcare, Anthem would come in between 3% and, 14%. I told you that I, took a gamble and cut us down to 5%, and I want you to know that every now and then I bet and, it pays off. Yeah, it wouldn't have been. Our health insurance came in at 3.15%, so we were able to cut an additional 71,000. So, and we, one of our neighboring districts has an increase of almost 14%. So, I was very pleased, and you were my first text when I saw the email, so I just wanted you to know. So out of that 71,000, the additional cut in healthcare, 35,000 of it came out of regular instruction. Article 2, you can see what I just talked about, the caseload stipends that we are removing from special ed, and the reduction in healthcare in the amount of 13,000 and change under the special ed expenditure article. Under other instruction, again, healthcare, a whole $264. Sorry, I'm struggling again, not having a mouse. Let's try page down. Oh yeah, that's not gonna work. Andrea needs to practice with a trackpad.
Or use your arrow.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Student and staff support, Article 5, the healthcare reduction was 7,360. Article 6, system administration, that cut was 1,600 and change. Article 7, and she said I could use my arrow, and what a great idea. Article 7, school administration, that healthcare reduction was 4,400. Article 8, transportation, that healthcare reduction was 4,260. Article 9, facilities maintenance, again, healthcare, $4,300 reduction. And that is all for a total reductions of $124,463.40. So that is how we got to the new version that you have. Based on that, I'm going to use my arrows. We are looking at a increase to the locals of 5.46% or $733,918. So it would be $238,000 increase for Gardner, $147,000 and change increase for Pittston, a $44,000 and change increase for Randolph, and an increase to West Gardner of $303,000. Theirs is so large because of their increased evaluation was higher than the others, but we've talked about how that happens.
Local valuation or state valuation?
The state valuation. Okay.
So, question, Andrea, given the finance committee's decision not to move forward with the $150,000, can you quickly recalculate?
Yep, I'm gonna bring up a spreadsheet. Let's see if I can.
Numbers, if that matters.
Let's see.
While you do that, may I ask a question?
As long as you're not asking me to
Not
talk.
asking you.
Okay.
In the budget, it says other instruction. Can you give me an idea of what that other instruction for 822,000 and change looks like?
Other instruction.
Anybody else that can answer that?
Yes.
besides you?
It's basically co-curricular and extracurricular instruction. It's the biggest part of it. It's athletics and our club sports. Trying to think of what else is tucked in there. I have to cheat because there's a huge.
Well, that's the best way to do
Yeah,
it, though.
exactly,
Oh, right.
I know. It's 21st century learning, so there's 18,000 in there that we provide support to the Boys and Girls Club and credit recovery. That is basically what's in other instruction. Credit recovery is Angela, why don't you speak while I do my
Students
thing?
fail a class, there's two pathways to recovery. One is to retake the entire class, depending on what their grade is. And the other option is if they reach a certain grade, 59 or 69, I can't remember what the cutoff is because we just changed it. They can recover the part of the class by engaging in outside school time with faculty or during study to go through a procedure to relearn the material and recover the learning, demonstrate their proficiency and earn credit. And so that is high
Because I have
school
the other
because
thing
of
in
the diploma requirement.
Yeah, I need to go.
And we've been committed to that method because realizing that if a student doesn't graduate on graduation day, they're probably not coming back.
It's in my way.
So we're trying to
Drastically increase our
capture.
dropout
There we
rate.
go.
Correct.
Credit recovery, Part of
Yeah.
the tiered intervention model.
It's trying to capture everyone while they're there and willing or
Or
unwilling, but while they're there.
Yeah.
To get the job
I'm
done.
just asking the questions as they come up because, you know,
No,
maybe
no,
somebody
that's
else has those questions too.
And that's a really good question.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I just want to check on one thing, just the state valuation we're talking about, the state goes through it's not a local determination,
there's local valuation that
that does,
drives our taxes, and then there's a state valuation, and they are not the same.
they're not the same, and they do that how often?
What's the question, Tony? I'm sorry.
Oh, how often do they do the state valuation?
Annually.
And it's an annual,
I
yeah,
was gonna say every 2 years.
And the valuation that they use on, you've written that number down, right?
Yep.
Okay. Why, please move the window away. It has to do with projecting.
Okay, just go in there and delete.
Yeah, problem is everything's in my way. So if we remove the ESCO project, we're now looking at $583,918. Well, you can do math. We're a 4.34%. She's right on target. I looked over, she did. It's a 4.34% increase. So that would look like an increase to, sorry,
Wow,
an
you can
increase
do
to Gardner of 183,000 and change, an increase to Pittston of 114,000 and change, an increase to Randolph of 31,000 and change, and an increase to West Gardner of 254,000 and change.
And that changes the 5.46% to what?
4.34%.
That's very acceptable, in my opinion, and I'm only one person.
Okay.
I would like to ask if we could consider perhaps reinstating the administrative assistance and guidance at the high school. We all got the letter from that particular assistant. And it seems like there's a heck of a lot of work involved beyond the normal duties, including sort of triage of all the kids that are coming in to talk to guidance, to talk to a social worker because they're upset. And I'm just concerned that having a friendly face there that knows the students and who can properly direct them to where they can go, or I don't know, Lauren, is there like a waiting room for kids to see?
We don't have a waiting room, but you walk in the door and we have 2 administrative assistants and guidance. And then to the left is the social worker's office and then our school counselor's office.
Is there
There's like chairs.
chairs there for them to
Yeah.
sit and wait? I just think that with everything that's going on right now, the anxiety levels of adults are so high, that the anxiety and potentially depression levels of our kids are also a big issue. And I'm just concerned that not having enough staffing in support just puts an awful lot of pressure on our counselors and our social worker, especially since we don't really know, I don't know if we've gotten our MOU back for the school-based health services, which would also have counseling.
So could you answer speak to the role and the reason why you propose that it be eliminated?
So like I said, we do have two administrative assistants. One functions more as our registrar, but also helps with tasks. The other one does a lot of like helping schedule for our counselors. They help schedule our staffings for 504s and just normal staffings. They do a lot of scholarship work, so they do a lot of work. And our reason again was it's a tough budget season. We're looking for areas to reduce. That was a position where, well, it does do a lot of work and we love that person. It was an area where we could reduce. There's obviously implications. It does mean shifting some work. It might mean each of our admin assistants takes on additional tasks. Us administrators will take on some tasks. The big piece we do is scholarships. That person helps a lot with scholarships and helping with testing. So of course, there's always implications. But again, when we're in this type of budget season and you ask us to dig deeper, those are decisions we have to make. So we put it forth as it hurts to lose this. There are certain implications that staff member in that position does a lot of work for us. But it's manageable.
Also, does she do FAFSA help in terms of?
Yeah, there's some help there, but our school counselors work with our students on that as well.
That's my biggest concern. I mean, I definitely appreciate your comments about mental health, but for this, obviously the board members received this email and it was pretty gut wrenching, to be honest.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we're making cuts, we're affecting.
Right, but this particular staff member talked about how they are the liaison for scholarships and so when a student is a senior and they're seeking the scholarships and seeking grants and seeking opportunities to go to school and whatnot, it's a really exciting time. And so as a student who went to school on scholarship, I would hate to see there not be that resource in the school for students who may be a little bit more disadvantaged financially. So can you speak to how maybe that scholarship, overcoming barriers would be accomplished?
So I mean, we wouldn't, if we were to lose this position, we don't lose that piece. We'd be shifting that work. Right now, that person does a lot of communication with the students about scholarships that exist. They help them kind of walk through the application process. So it's certainly a big piece, an important piece. We wouldn't lose it. We would just be shifting that work elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, all
None
of
of
these
these are
are,
easy decisions.
all of these are tough decisions. But I know that Lauren has spent a lot of time really thinking about the roles, the responsibilities, and thinking about the capacity that our other staff members have and whether we have the capacity to assume those responsibilities. And the recommendation is that, yes, there's always an impact, no matter what, but we have the capacity, we can shift some things around. At the high school, you currently have 2 administrative assistants in the
Three.
guidance department,
Okay, yeah.
right? And then there's another administrative assistant in the main office, plus you have your attendance officer. So there are 4, the equivalent of kind of 4 administrative assistants at the high school. Whereas that is certainly not the case in some of our.
I was gonna say the attendance officer just does the attendance.
They do
She
a
does
multitude of things,
She
so they
does
do,
more.
all the answering the phone, communicating with parents, calling home of, where's your child today? Like, we haven't heard from you. They run our tardies, skip list, suspension letters, detention list. All those positions have a lot of duties, but, our attendance does a lot more than just attendance. She's the first person you see when you walk in the main office.
And again, we're just trying to be responsive, the enrollment at one time, I know it was higher years ago, but in my tenure, the enrollment at the high school was around 650 or so, and now we're down to about 580. So there's certainly a decline. Now some of the needs have shifted, absolutely. It's not the same today in the building as it was once before. It is very different. But we're trying to be responsive to the fact that we do have fewer students that we're servicing within all of our buildings.
I'm not trying to stifle conversation, but I'm hoping that we can get through the rest of the documents and then we can continue conversation. Would that work? Sorry. So at last week's meeting, I said that I was going to create a compilation of all of our cuts. So you have in front of you another, an orange-ish version of all of our cuts. So you'll see in Article 1, from the original budget that we proposed, we have cut 647,000 and change. There's fitness room equipment, a kindergarten position at LER, which is a result of enrollment decline, kindergarten position at HT, again, enrollment decline, an unfilled fifth grade position, again, enrollment decline, miscellaneous instructional supplies, healthcare reduction, high school science teacher, a high school business ed teacher, a pre-K teacher, again, enrollment decline, learning lab ed tech, an MLL ed tech, which is a multilingual language learner. It's been called several things over the last 30 years, so yeah, exactly. A pre-K ed tech 3, an ed tech higher unfilled, that's actually not a cut, it's just savings from the individual that we hired, opportunity culture stipends that we talked about previously, and the remainder of the cuts from healthcare. Special education, Article 2, we have cut 710,000. Miscellaneous adjustments, unfilled special ed tech position. We didn't cut positions. Again, it's a result of individuals being hired and the benefits that they actually ended up taking. So that was that cut. Elimination of a special ed social worker, as discussed in one of our previous meetings. Main care seed funds, that was a $245,000 cut. Special purpose private school out of district placements in the amount of $239,000. We actually added some BCBA contracted services back into the budget in the amount of $35,000. The healthcare reduction, special ed caseload stipends that we just talked about, and the other healthcare reduction. Other instruction, there are a lot of cuts from athletics, and you can see those through uniforms, some healthcare. The person who is in other instruction is, other than the coach, is actually the athletic director. So that's why you're seeing a reduction in healthcare. That's why that's there.
So it's a total of 46,000.
Yep.
865.
Yep.
Out of over $800,000 budget.
Out of, yep. So we cut 5.39% of their budget. Student and staff support, miscellaneous supplies, a staff update, actually added money to the budget, healthcare reduction. We spoke about the school nurse at the last budget meeting. The administrative assistant guidance, you can see the position that we were just discussing, and the additional healthcare reduction. System administration, miscellaneous adjustments, and healthcare is basically what sits there. There was a total of 6,000, a little over 6,000 cut from that expenditure article. School administration, basically where the administrative assistants and your building principals are. A sound system was cut from the high school gymnasium, miscellaneous adjustments, and then again, healthcare. Transportation, an unfilled driver position in the amount of 58,000 due to route consolidation. Miscellaneous, bus driver, new training, we talked about that during the meeting that this was cut. Transportation to special purpose private schools, about 50,000 there, and again, healthcare reductions. Total reduction from transportation in the amount of 127,000 and change. It equates to 4.85%. Facilities, miscellaneous adjustments, the emergency lights, the fire panels, those are being done out of this year's budget, as we discussed at a previous meeting. Gym floor repair at LER for 38,000, the generator from this office, siding replacements at both Pittston and HT were cut. Roof repair in the amount of 189,000, that was cut. However, it does leave two sections of roof repair still in the budget at the high school, as well as other preventative maintenance in the budget. Inline fence, Hopefield, a cut. Additional security at high school, that was for the additional security that the city of Gardner was providing. Emergency lights at LER, again, that's a safety issue which being addressed out of this year's budget. And finally, healthcare reductions. Total amount cut from the facilities maintenance budget is 444,000 and change. That's 9.18%. So far, we've done some good work. We've cut over 2,153,000 from where we started, so.
And as I said, we'll go back and we'll look at 49,000. That may be a little bit high for the stipends. We may be able to reduce a little bit there. And on the agenda Thursday night is a proposal to consider a co-op for swimming. And if the board approves that, that will save about $9,000. That could also be reduced.
Don't we already have a co-op for swimming?
With Halldale, we're looking at having Coney join us.
Yeah,
We joined Coney.
yeah, I was
Us
gonna
join
say,
Coney.
us join them,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
No, they can join us.
But that could be another $9,000 worth of savings there, so.
So the next item in your packet is a document that Pat asked for. It's basically our cuts by expenditure article by our meetings. So you can see where we are from where we went from meeting to meeting and how our budget change has changed since March 11th.
Appreciate that.
Yep. The next item in your packet is basically the same document that I shared with you last time regarding how much each of our taxpayers pay in our municipalities and the communities surrounding that comprise MSAD11. I just updated this to reflect the changes, the most recent changes. So you can see on the side the net effect of taxpayers. The biggest takeaway from this is the disparity in what the property taxpayers pay from community to community. And you can see this from the current tax and the proposed tax. And just to be clear, the percentage of property tax is the percentage of property tax that the district is responsible. The remainder is basically the county and the local budget. So just so that you understand how this works. The next document is the simplified version, the version that I had typically shared that basically shows the increase, just the increase to taxpayers based on the budget that we brought forward tonight and the increase. And I think that is all the documents that I have printed for you. One of the things that was requested at, by Mullen was, the per pupil expenditure. It is in the folder that I shared with you.
Yes.
I did not print it out. I'm just going to touch upon, sorry. I have this black bar from sharing with you that appears in Google Docs, and it's always wherever I don't need for it to be. So, so I went to the Department of Education website, and what I'm sharing with you is something that each of you can pull up yourself from their website. Basically, throughout the year, the state requires us, me, to upload all of our expenditures by quarter to the state. It is actually something every school district is required to do. And that upload and that information is actually part of our audit. So the auditor, when they come in, they look at the uploads and make sure that everything is in compliance. So I just want everyone to know that it's just not anybody uploading whatever they feel like it. It's part of one of the things that they look at. So it's audited information. The state has this on their website in various versions. I've shared 3 versions with you. The first one is, and your version looks like this. And it basically, there are 3 versions. The first version that I shared is per pupil amounts, and it's broken by expenditure articles. So you can see across the state how much, based on a.
I think you're not sharing that.
Sorry.
It's all right. I just noticed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah, there you
share.
go. Yep, no worries. I'm like, I know it was an eye chart because I just opened it.
Share.
It's such tiny print.
Yep, it is. And
There you go.
I'm going to share it with you I'm going to share it. Is it going to share?
There.
So this is what it looks
Yeah,
like when you, this is one of the versions.
Yeah.
So basically on the side is the per pupil cost, and then they break that cost among the expenditure articles. I'm going to show you what I did, but let me tell you what I've shared with you first. The next version is the same thing, but it's by, is it percentage of total? Per pupil amount, sorry, every time I change documents.
We're all being polite. No one can see that.
I know, right?
Let's see.
Even when you sit with your computer, you're gonna. Yep.
So there
I
are
can't do
3
this.
versions there. So basically what I did is I took, sorry, need to find where I am or I need to be. I basically took their PDF and I exported it into Excel. And I wanted, let's see if this shows up any better.
Enjoy the concert.
The problem is there's so much information. There's no way to make this meaningful. I went through and exported it into Excel, and then I sorted it from high to low.
Oh, that's kind.
Okay, yep.
Nice.
So I just want to make sure per pupil expenditures.
Thank you for doing that.
So I don't have the charts that I usually have for the budget booklet ready yet, but I have this to share with you. And what I did was I can't even get it to, sorry.
It's in our folder, right?
Yep, hang tight. Sorry. I just want, and it's not that you need to see the individual, but I want you to see where.
Which one is the
I don't see it
sorted
here.
one?
Yep,
I don't see it.
I didn't share Excel because I wasn't sure who had Excel and I didn't want to.
It's in a different spot.
Yeah, I
It's
don't see
in,
it.
oh yeah, so I looked in requested budget, the B.
There's another subfolder that says, per pupil expenditures.
That yours isn't in there.
No,
Just the three from the Department of Education are in there. That it looks
Yeah.
at per
Okay.
pupil expenditures, it looks at the percentage, and then it looks at a breakdown based on expenditure warrant article.
Whoa, that's
what is
little.
my problem?
Giant barcode.
Right.
Where
Okay.
can I get it to share?
Just by
I
alphabet.
don't know how much
But
time we want to spend at
I'd really
6:15.
like to do this sort.
So I will find a different way of sharing
Or maybe even just
information with
verbal.
you.
Yeah.
I will share with you the Excel spreadsheet and I will leave them sorted.
Thank you.
What I will say is, looking at the information, this is what I've gleaned, that we are still close to when you sort the per pupil expenditures from high to low, we are close to the bottom, not the bottom, but we are still probably the last either page or the last page. So out of all the school districts, our per pupil rate per student is lower than, I would say, 80% of the other school districts.
In the whole state.
Mhm.
Yeah. And did you do it by average because at each grade level or each building level, it's different?
So it is not that way. That is not how the state sorts this information.
Okay.
Basically, the state sorts this information by per pupil expenditure, and then they break it out by expenditure article. So then I resorted it. And that on this spreadsheet, I also highlighted the other communities that we compare ourselves to.
Okay.
And everybody was pretty much right in the ballpark, okay? What I did see when I sorted it by expenditure Article 1, which is regular instruction, I think with the exception of all of the other districts that we compare ourselves to, we spend more on regular instruction than all of those other districts that we compare ourselves to, which I found very interesting. And I really want you to see it. It's just not going to work tonight with this. I think what I'll do is we'll come back and look at it, maybe at another finance meeting. What I'll do is I will cut out everybody but those other districts so that it's more manageable to look at. But I wanted you to have the entire list. So there are several versions of it. Please look at it. Maybe we can look at it during the next meeting, or I can do a chart, or
Yeah, we can look at that, and I guess we need some direction though from finance committee members on where are we going with this? We're down to whatever
Down
that
to
figure was.
3.4 something.
Right.
So my question to the finance committee is, and I'm sorry that Molly's not here, but do we want for the administrators to go deeper, or are we prepared to bring this budget to the board for a vote? Julian?
I would frankly like to see some more cuts in the extracurriculars. As opposed to any more cuts in terms of administration. And we're not right now cutting the music position. So, and I would frankly really like to get that administrative position back in, but that budget of over 800,000 and only 43,000 in cuts, we keep adding activities, we keep adding sports, we keep adding and adding and adding. And I think it's time to start taking a hard look and saying which activities fund themselves, which activities because of the cost of being in the activity means that other people, the lower income students don't have an opportunity? Is there more chance for some sort of cooperative with other districts for some of our sports? It just seems like we have a vast amount of activities and sports after school. And I don't think that we can really sacrifice anything more from the educational and special ed and administrative budget.
So I don't want to put Nate on the spot. However, I know that there are extracurricular activities that are the reason kids come to school. And we are not a pay-to-play district because we can't afford, and we talked about that 15 years ago. Are we going to become that district where the students who get to participate in extracurricular activities need to pay for that? We don't live in a district that can afford that. So I don't want to outwardly disagree, but I know that there are a number of students because of you have to be passing all of your classes in order to participate. But I don't want to do your job for you. I don't want to sing your praises.
I was just going to say there are some sports where it is sort of pay to play, because if you're in hockey, you have to buy your own equipment. It's not supplied by the school, correct?
No, it's not, but it's the same thing. It's not, and there's no way that the district would ever buy skates, buy sticks, buy pucks. Well, they probably do provide pucks. But tell Nate.
We don't provide any personal items.
Right.
We don't provide cleats for baseball players and stuff.
Right.
It's the essential equipment. And to your point, essentially, we have added programs over the last couple of years because it's our responsibility, my responsibility, to try to get as many students involved in extracurricular activities as possible.
We have 41% this fall.
41% of our student body at the high school was involved in fall athletics because we do have a lot of offerings in the fall. In the winter, we have fewer because we don't have as many offerings in the spring. So we have, I think on my school board report, 194 high school students registered for spring sports right now. That's a lot of kids at a small budget, very small budget. When you compare us to schools, like Andrew just talked about, roughly the same size. I just got back from a conference. There's a school, I won't mention the name, same size as us. Their budget is $1.5 million, and that doesn't include transportation. So we're doing a lot on a very small budget. That's my opinion.
If we add the $9,000 that we think we can save with going to a co-op, that will bring the savings to $55,865.26, which is equivalent to 6.43%.
Which is the second highest percentage of all the articles.
So as we look at all of them, yeah, it is higher than most of them, other than special ed. And special ed, a lot of it had to do with out of district placements and seed money. And then the other one would be facilities. So I feel like they're contributing. I also would say we have how many co-ops?
We have a lot of co-ops.
We have a lot
We're
of
trying to
co-ops.
find more. So for instance, with swimming, I'm also gonna propose that we add more schools to our boys ice hockey co-op. On Thursday's school board meeting, we have a co-op with cheerleading, wrestling, girls lacrosse. In addition to that,
Skiing, don't we have skiing too?
skiing, we are an individual co-op with Maranic, so we're saving money that way by not having to hire a coach.
Right.
So we're trying to, provide as many opportunities as we possibly can at the lowest price we possibly can.
And I would just say one more thing. I heard you say that you would like to see a deeper analysis of all of this. That cannot be done by next week. We have periodically done
couple years ago.
extensive analysis of our athletic department. So it can be done, and just, it takes time. There's actually a lot that goes into it. And there's no way that work could be accomplished in a meaningful way by next week.
And I also just
And
want to.
the budget has to be approved next week.
I also want to throw out that our All Sports Boosters has provided us since the fall with approximately $50,000 worth of supplies, uniforms,
Yes.
materials, et cetera, et cetera.
Just to add to Nate's point, like Nate, Christina and I, we spent a lot of time digging through that athletic budget to really be responsive to this year's budget climate. We prioritize uniform rotations. The amount of supplies coming in from our coaches is really low. So a lot of it, as Nate has shared, it's like how much we pay officials. There's certain rates that we just can't control. But we really did a thorough overview in terms of the high school athletic program this year and really prioritized their needs.
And Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that athletics represents about 2.5% of the budget, roughly.
Yeah, that was my calculation.
And 15 years ago, it was 2% of the budget. So it's not like it's taken this big jump.
And we're gonna be under where we were
Yes.
last year.
So I understand that you don't want, yes,
I just wanted you to hear, Molly texted me, no need to go deeper from me.
thank you.
Yeah, well,
Appreciate
Yep.
that. And I honestly, as far as the administrative position at the high school goes, I trust Lauren, she knows. I also trust that that some of us don't even have any students that go into the guidance office. That the administrative staff that we have in the high school, both in the main office and in the guidance office, is exemplary. That is a lily pad landing place for so many of our students to just go and be in a warm, Lauren, please tell me if I'm wrong, but to be in a warm, kind, loving, supportive place during the school day for every kind of student. So when we receive those kinds of emails from staff, I'm sorry, Nate, I didn't mean to be dismissive. I feel like I just threw him over the board. But I feel like we don't, those kind of emails to the board, while I care about all of our employees, I really do. It's just so difficult when we know who that person is. Then there's a face to it.
Well, I don't know that
And
person at
well,
all. I'm just looking at guidance sees 100%
Yeah,
of the student body
yes.
every year.
And they do, and if they think that they can do what they need to do in order to service all of our students, I think we have to trust somebody. And nobody's gonna ever say, fire me. I know that, if you like your job. So we ask them to do some pretty hard work and they're doing it. And I just want our staff to know that they are appreciated for all the hard work that they're doing. I am so grateful and I'm glad I don't have to be you, that we just manage the numbers.
And again, it's, we're looking at positions, not people, and that's so hard because
Right.
the amount of value I have to that person is so high and the work that they do has so much value. But we have to be responsive and that's what it looks like and there's implications. But I have to be able to come to you and say, I can manage without this. And unfortunately, I can. I'm gonna miss that position for sure, but it's manageable.
So, and Nate, please hear me. I apologize. I wasn't dismissing you. I hear you.
Oh, no, I didn't.
I wasn't kicking you off the podium.
No, I didn't.
So, yeah, I'm looking, we still have another item, we're an hour and a half in,
Could we stay another?
yeah, I know.
Madam Chair, I will see you at the next meeting.
Thank
So-
you. Love your socks,
Do
man.
we
They
have
pull the whole
some-
thing together.
Do we have some direction on how, again, where would you like us to go with this?
I'll wait for Jeff to return, but I wonder, I just think if we're not wanting to go deeper, I want to know from Joanne if she's content. But I want to know from Jeff also. I really appreciate Jeff's input and how positive he's been through this entire process. I really want to be on the record for that. He's been really helpful. I want people to be able to feel confident tonight when they go to sleep that we've done our due diligence. So,
Well, while we wait for Jeff, have we made enough cuts? Like, so why wouldn't this committee, since I'm not a voting member, but
it's fine.
why wouldn't this committee be confident in bringing it to the larger school board? Are there specific reasons
Oh, no,
why?
You have to bring it to the
we have to.
largest-
That's
Well,
what
no,
we
I
have
know
to
that,
do.
but I know you
So-
have to, but is there any reason why
We wouldn't?
or any more needs that you see or have we not reached the number?
So I wanted it below 10%.
Okay.
And I was not, my ask was for 8%, 7%.
Okay.
What we've had in the past is with a former board chair 10 years ago, Eric German. Eric, if you're watching, you'll love to hear me mention you. He always wanted no more than 3.
No more
And
than 3%?
no more than 3% increase.
Oh, increase, okay.
And that's a big ask in this economy and in this particular place. So that we've come in at 3.46, 3.4,
4.34.
4.34, to me is like, wow, that's amazing. So for me personally, I feel very confident bringing this budget to the board, but I'm 1 vote out of 4. So, and I said while you were missing, Jeff, that I have really appreciated your part in this process and how positive and helpful you've been. And I saw your eyebrow do that. You're a nice man. And I want to know if you feel comfortable, because I feel comfortable going forward.
I have other things in my mind that I think could be cut.
Mhm.
I think it'd come a tremendous distance, really. Like this last week, learning that we have 5 nurses
Mhm.
and the student population we're dealing with, I would be comfortable with removing another one of those positions. I'd go from 5 to 4.
Mhm.
That would be one of my suggestions. The other one, under the Article 9, there was three carpeting issues for $10,000 apiece. Did they get removed? From this
Carpeting.
request?
I think the carpeting is,
I was thinking those, that would be a $30,000 savings as well there. I don't know how critical they are. Maybe David could speak to that. Could they be put off another year? I mean, the distance we've come to where we are now is pretty impressive, so.
It's very impressive.
And Gabe could speak to the floor, the
Yeah, I
tile,
mean,
I'm sorry, the rugs.
Yeah, I mean, the carpet, $10,000 doesn't get you very much. Well, it'll do a couple classrooms. So that's why we've been kind of doing them little bits by little bits. Believe me, if you would spend a night vacuuming at any of the schools, you would say, I cannot believe these carpets are still here. They're original, they're 30 some odd years
Some odd
old.
years old, correct.
And they are in very poor shape,
Rough shape.
extremely poor shape.
And with the nurse, I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to the nurses, but we have an increase in services that are required for the students. We've seen an increase in diabetes. And so the number of students that need midday support is growing, has grown. So the nurses, the administration really looked at all of that, felt comfortable with 1. But not yet at the place where they felt comfortable in removing 2 nurses, given the current needs of our students.
Well, I mean, again, you learn things. When does diabetes become an overwhelming issue in schools? That's a kind of an eye-opening
Yeah.
statistic.
Mhm.
Wow,
Yeah, so if students need, and they do need insulin throughout the day,
so I mean, but is it the function of the school to take care of that?
Yeah, they'll go into shock and coma if we don't take care of it.
I'm
So
sorry.
a lot of these kids are type 1 and they'll go into shock or coma if they're not taken care of, because what's happening is a lot of them are diagnosed when they're young. And they're just learning when they're in elementary school, am I right? Correct. And so what's happening is they have these devices on them and they create warnings, and if they're not working properly, or if the child didn't balance their diet properly, because they're little and they're learning, it's like a quick instant reaction that the teacher just can't hand them a piece of candy.
Even
I worked with a man who was
physical
diabetic,
education
and I had to learn how to deal with him. But,
Yeah,
so you're talking, this is happening in very young children.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
And so they're just learning, they're not at the point where they're adolescents and they've had it for a few years and they've had some stabilization around it. And on top of it, these devices are connected to the parents' phones, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the moment it goes off,
And the
the
nurse's
parent
phone
also,
and the teacher's
the
phone, all
nurse's phone,
three.
the teacher's phone, and the parent's phone. So the moment it goes off, everyone's aware that there's a reaction that needs to happen by someone who knows
Oh,
what they're
I
doing.
know, I had no idea you're dealing with this kind of a problem.
Well, and
I'm
also they're
stunned by it.
growing and they're changing and their weights are changing, and so it's a constant update.
Is anyone, I mean, this, again, this isn't really something we're gonna solve here. Is anyone looking at the root cause of this at their home? Why are they coming to school? Why are they developing diabetes?
It's type 1.
It's
It's
type
not,
one.
it's not type 2. It has nothing to do with their diet.
Right.
This is a type 1, it's a totally different animal.
Type 2 is based on diet.
I mean, we've had several who've been diagnosed recently at the middle school, and they have dealt with a plethora of other medical needs that they thought the student had, and now they're discovering this. And so trying to balance that out with appropriate medications, and even physical education can cause their sugars to go up.
Oh,
So there's-
recess.
Exactly, recess, lunch, all of those things. So it takes up a lot of time. And trying to help teach the students how to monitor on their own, right, with support.
You're making my head hurt.
I hope that the whole industry
Sorry
is
for
working
that.
on that, but that's not in our realm.
Right.
We just have to be responsive and make sure these kids are functional through the day.
And safe.
Let's see.
And thank you for asking. That's a really good question because
The nurses do
it
keep,
is changing.
they have, especially the last couple of years, have been keeping very detailed, well, they always keep their own medical records, right? But detailed incident logs and so they can report on frequency of types of events, and so that we're clear as administrators, how are you really using your time? So that, when I was a kid, I don't know if the nurses were that busy. I was a kid. I was not in the nurse's office unless I didn't want to be in school. And I could find a way to do something about that,
No,
but
I've never.
but I've read the reports. I find that they're pretty active. I recognize though, because of the conversation last week, right? The conversation about how many nurses do you have? And a lot of it is we have buildings that are in multiple proximity, they're far away from each other. And we're asking one human to manage multiple locations. The more we ask one human to manage multiple locations on sensitive issues that all need the same issue at the same time. And I don't want to ask our principals to be trying to figure out how to respond
No,
in
they're
medical
not.
situations.
No,
But if the nurses aren't there,
They
then
have-
it's the building principal and the administrative assistants who have to be trained, and they're the ones providing that care.
Yeah.
And so
Tricky.
obviously, it is tricky, and obviously, many
And
of
it could go
our
wrong.
administrative assistants and our administrators are not necessarily comfortable in doing so, given the nature
But
of.
Jeff, it's a problem that could be solved with consolidated schools.
Yes,
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
you learn something new every day.
Well, as I've read, I believe that type 1 diabetes is genetic. So you might be able to see that if a mom has it, then a child, it will surface in the child and.
Where is it coming from? I know we're off subject.
Yeah, we're way off
topic.
But anyway, yeah, so.
Amazing.
Do we have a plan if we do not get the Title I funding? And
It's Title I, so it's the ESEA, but it's also local entitlement, which is special ed. It's a
Right.
combination of the two.
right,
So I think we've said it's 1.3 million, right? If we don't get it. So no, we do not have a plan.
And again, what that means is if we don't get that Title I funding, that IDEA funding for our special needs students, those are services that we will have to locally provide because those are an entitlement to our students.
so
So,
we'll have to cut somewhere else.
well, after the budget's passed, I don't know what we'll do, but yes, those are things that we have to, the requirements aren't gonna change. It's how's it gonna get paid for?
And it's not like we can add an additional $1.3 million in
No.
expenditures because we're only allowed to spend what the
What the
taxpayers
taxpayers
authorized us to
have
spend.
authorized us to
So
spend.
in order to add those positions,
Yeah.
you're right, it would be cuts elsewhere.
May I ask one question, final question? So the overall budget increase to the towns is 4.34?
Yes.
Okay.
That's with that additional, the cut of the 150,000. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I had a preconceived limit of 5%. You beat it.
And you didn't share that.
I didn't share it. I kept that a secret. I said I'd never support anything above it to myself.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
So we're here now. I would suggest we move this towards the full school board, let them look at it.
Jeff, thank you. I appreciate that because I have that in my head too,
Is that a motion?
Well, let's make a motion. I make a motion that we promote this budget as written with the 4.34% increase to towns.
second. I'll second it. I can. All right. All those in favor of moving it forward? And opposed? Joanne, okay?
Just remember, Tony and I can't vote.
I know, yeah. And you're
So-
opposing it because we're not going deeper into athletics?
Yes, yeah, I think we need to look at, well, not just athletics, but also any extracurriculars.
So the plays, the musicals,
Well, those seem to be frankly funded. There are certain things that seem to be funded. They have budgets and they've got money moving forward. At least according to when I was talking.
So do they. So
yeah, are they funded and do they?
we still do pay for our drama program. We have stipends. There are definitely costs. So we have an incredible boosters organization that supports, but it doesn't cover all of it.
So annually, we get about $15,000 in gate receipts from athletics. Obviously, that doesn't cover our program. We get $3,000 in musical receipts, which doesn't even begin to touch the amount that we spend on the musical or the other school plays. So neither of them are self-really funding, but both, all of that money goes, if you look above in miscellaneous revenue, it's included there.
And it's important that we look at all of it for every student and to not prefer one over the other because not everybody's gonna be in a play. Not everybody's gonna play a sport. It's our responsibility to be certain that every single student has a place that they belong. Like it or not, to understand it or not, it's our job. So when we vote on the budget, it's important to recognize those things. And I, again, want to thank all of our staff for working as hard as they do.
So the next item is the adult ed budget. We do not have the adult ed budget ready to bring to you. We're having some struggles in trying to put together
Thank you, Nate.
the budget to bring to you. We've seen a reduction in some of the revenues. And so trying to balance that with the expenditure side. And where can we cut on the expenditure side to balance with the decline in revenues? While not decimating the program because we want to be able to rebuild the program. And you can't rebuild the program if you don't have the staff to help you rebuild. So we're struggling a bit, which is why you don't hear or don't have it here. If you recall, what was it, Josh, 3 years ago now, 2 years ago, that there was the combining of some services with RSU 2 and Winthrop.
And Winthrop, yes.
And right now, I know RSU 2 has notified us that they're waiting for more information to know whether they're gonna continue contributing their $35,000 in revenue to the program. So all of that is kind of creating a pause. And I guess, Josh, I will turn it to you. What can you add? And if you don't mind standing at the podium.
So, no question for a lot of reasons. Enrichment hasn't bounced back to pre-COVID levels
we've gotten, and you can see that, I think, on the sheet that Andrea provides. I think this year will not be as low as last year, but not as high as 2 years ago. So I mean, we still have some things to figure out that way. That's what I'm anticipating. Ultimately, the enrichment expenses that we, even on our best year, incur, don't cover all that we expend in terms of staff to do what we do. That's not terrible as community education. But for a lot of reasons, we go into COVID. We have staff transition in my office pretty much every year since that point, which is my responsibility. And some mistakes on my part on some things, catalogs that haven't been at the quality we want them to be at. And we just haven't come back to where we were with revenue. That program, none of that is subsidized by the state. None of the enrichment is subsidized by the state. So we do have an amount of money set aside in unallocated funds that I think it's in our interest, because our state subsidy only gets better when we spend money. Because we are on a reimbursement as opposed to the rest of. So I do think it's in our interest to spend some of that money that has been set aside. And then I also think that I would recommend that the finance committee consider looking at the funds that come in through the ED 279 for adult education. And each year about $14,000 comes from the general fund into adult education's budget. And those funds, sometimes we get that amount. I think in the last 5-6 years, we've missed that amount once. And that's considering like if we only got 40 to 50% of what is in the ED 279. But those funds come in right now. If I talk about 16 to 20-year-old students that come into adult, we talked about a place for everyone. Right now I have 16 to 20-year-old students. And I have 9 with IEPs from this district. Who came with IEP, who had IEPs previously. Now, that is not a criticism to say, oh, they're not doing what they need to do and that sort of thing. These students, I think, are in the right place, or we wouldn't have had them come in. Or we would have, encouraged them to go back to high school, and some we have. So I think that those funds have traditionally not fully returned to adult ed. I think it's time to consider that they should. Whatever comes into the ED 279. And I think we are gonna need to spend from our unallocated funds, because if we don't spend, or if we cut too heavily into our academics, we will gut our subsidy from the state in a couple years down the road. So we're already gonna face some of that. But the more you take out of what would be our 1,500 lines, those are subsidizable at different rates. Nothing in enrichment, if we cut there, ends up impacting our subsidy. So we do need to rebuild the community education piece. And we keep calling it enrichment. I think I'm going to switch that, because I do think we need to focus on community education, at least for myself. So I do think there is work. I do have strategies to do that, to reduce the cost of our catalog, to do it differently than we have in the past, which may or may not be completely comfortable with, and may not agree all on that yet. So I don't really want to say too much, but I do think there are ways that we can do things in a more just in time kind of advertising and meeting people. We can actually probably do more catalogs, fewer printings, stuff like that. And then I think there are adjustments for how our staff is organized that we have to consider. So those are all kind of out there, and I think that's why it's tough to put forth the budget, but I will say adult education has not increased their funding in, 4 or 5 years.
They
from
haven't
local-
increased the amount that is being sent to the 4 local communities. I don't think one of the things that you mentioned is that our subsidy for next year for adult ed was reduced by $10,000. So in addition to, RSU2 taking, reconsidering their participation in the co-op and other things, it's a real difficult year.
Yeah.
One of the things that I included in the folder for adult ed is basically a history of our enrichment program. And you'll see pre-COVID, we were bringing in, I'm just talking about net revenue here. Not netting, revenue not netting against expenses, but we were bringing in over $100,000 in enrichment funds a year. Since COVID, we've barely hit more than 30,000. So it's, there's definitely some issues. We talked about, like the general budget, the adult ed budget has a fund balance on its own, and we're concerned about not wanting to use all of that money in a given year so that we don't have that moving forward to rely on for other reasons. So we're still flushing things out. It's definite, yeah.
Can I ask you, in terms of you said there's 20 students, 16 to 20 years old. This is to finish their high school education, correct?
Yeah.
What is that number like versus last year and?
That's up from last year. I think we were around 15. I'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure we're up from last year in the numbers.
So the need is up.
So here I can tell you that those numbers, I'd have to break it down. I can tell you this year, 14 or 16 to 20-year-olds came out of Gardner and 6 are coming out of Winthrop or other. So we have, as a sharing that responsibility actually is helpful, really, with Winthrop, but yeah, so it's up for us, and I think by about 5 students, and I don't anticipate that, it fluctuates year to year, but yeah, it's definitely harder. These are students that need more attention, from our teachers.
So the 16 through 20-year-olds that are in the ED279, which is part of obviously the funding formula, we do not see all of those monies dollar for dollar. So if you remember, if you work through all the pages, based on the total allocation, the district may only receive 62% from the state. So I just want us to be clear about what we're talking about. There are also conversations at the state level about moving that 16 through 20 money out of the general, the K-12 funding formula and having it flow through a different way. There have been just the Department of Ed, the finance team has been talking about that for a while. I would be grateful if they weren't connected, but for the time being, they are. So I just want to make sure.
About it since I started 6 years ago.
I just want to make sure that when we're talking about a figure, that we're not talking about the figure in the middle of the document.
I can tell you, having crunched it myself, if you look over 10 years, it's just under $200,000 at a 40% payment from the state.
But as a
that didn't come to adult ed, but did go to the general fund budget.
As a token, the district has always, in our general ed, in our K-12 budget, there's 14,500 in that budget that we give to adult ed as in kind for, but.
And the number I shared takes all of that out. So I just wanna, I really think it's time, if it comes out, it comes out, that would be great, but I think in my mind, I really think that that is there because of the numbers of 16 to 20-year-olds that come into adult ed. That's why we get a tenth of a student per class that they're in. It should go back there. I think that would be a significant help to adult ed's budget without having to increase a burden of taxpayers again.
So for next week, since we still have the adult ed budget, we're going to need to come back for finance.
Mhm.
I have a couple thoughts. I have on the agenda for Thursday night approval of all three budgets. I know you had some thought, talk to you, and maybe we pull them all on the agenda, maybe we keep a couple of them on. But if we have to come back here next week, you're going to need to have a special meeting anyways, right? And so if you're gonna need a special meeting anyways, I may be able to take that extra $9,000 out of this amount and actually lower it a little bit more. But that I can't do that until after the board takes action next Thursday, so I can't very well have a budget to present to you at the same time, if that makes sense. We're also looking at principalship positions, so there's the possibility of next week having a nomination for a principalship position. So we may need to look at a special board meeting next week. It doesn't have to be lengthy, but to kind of take action on the budget, or at least the adult ed budget, and then on maybe the hiring of a building principal.
But the budgets will need to be set by the end of next week so that
At
we
the
can,
latest.
so that we can move forward with all of the required legal processes that we need to follow,
Yeah,
so.
next week is our absolute deadline.
So what if we were to bring the budget, the big budget, this Thursday for a vote? Because if there's any big outlying bomb that comes in at the board meeting, then we have another meeting where we could pull it back together.
And I have food service, and you've already approved food service, so we
Yes.
can do that. We can put food
So
service in the
let's-
regular budget.
Let's try and get this,
Okay.
the budget set,
Okay,
and that will just give us all a better
and then that will
feeling
just
of-
leave us with the adult ed budget.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with the amount. Jeff is certainly comfortable with the amount.
And you're,
And so is Molly.
We'll see what the board.
It's not your favorite.
I'd like to do more, but.
and your budget motion can also include any, you could say specific reductions, like if Pat were able to take, less at the
Right.
following reduction, so.
That following reduction.
Yeah, so it would give us a little bit of wiggle room to further reduce.
Okay.
I kind of want to know from the larger group that we're going in the right direction. And-
Right. Yep, okay.
So if we have a special meeting, we have a special meeting next week, what day would that be on?
I have no idea. Don't know yet. It will depend on people's schedules.
It's not Thursday, right up front.
You can request.
I'm gonna request it and hope for the best, and so.
Yeah.
My professor, is very patient with me missing class on Thursdays to do school board meetings.
Oh, you did say that Thursdays were not.
Yeah, I have a couple
Yeah.
more weeks left of the semester and I'd like to pass the class.
Well, I'd like you to pass the
Yes,
class.
thank you.
It's less expensive if you pass the class.
Exactly,
Got that.
exactly.
Absolutely.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
That's it.
All right, then I think we should adjourn at
Motion to adjourn.
6:57.
Thank you.
So done. Second and let's go. Yes.
Right, thank you.
Thank you all for sitting through this riveting session.